Life is short. It's very short. That's what everyone tells me all the time. They tell me, hey, Pinely, buddy, you gotta cherish every moment in life. We all have this set time on this planet, and we should use that time to do the things that actually make us happy. Things that make it all worth it. And you know what I say to these people? Haha, nope. I'm not gonna do any of that, thank you very much. Because why would I do that when I can instead use my precious free time to just torture myself by watching 8 hours of movies made by Doug Walker? That seems like a way better way to spend my time if you ask me. This past day has been rough. Doug Walker has been on YouTube for a very long time, reviewing all kinds of films, TV shows, etc. A lot of things that he himself grew up watching as a kid. In these videos, he likes to feature quite a lot his famous character, the Nostalgia Critic, a short-tempered, wacky, nerdy guy. I know a lot of people who have watched and enjoyed his videos since they were kids. People who would cite this guy as their very first inspiration to start doing YouTube themselves. Myself though, I've never really had that same kind of emotional attachment to the guy. I've always seen him around, but never really got into his content. In fact, the horrible thing that the title of this video says that I've done, yeah, that was essentially my first introduction to the guy. And my god, what an introduction it was. Now, from what I know, there are a total of 3 main Nostalgia Critic feature films. The anniversary movies, as they call them. And I think he also did a whole bunch of short films. They don't really count with what I'm doing here, but I still decided to watch one of them. Nostalgia Critic's The Wall. Everyone said it's really great, so I felt like I had to check that one out. I think that movies, whether they're good or not, can a lot of the time serve as some kind of interesting peek into the mind of the people who made them. The story can sometimes tell us what are the things that these people really care about. In some cases, the characters can almost be like different aspects of the writer who created them, and that's kind of what I want to see here. I want to watch these bold creative leaps made by Doug Walker and friends, and see what I can learn about this man. I wanted to get a really good look into the mind that inspired many. And before I even say anything, know that I don't really have anything personal against Doug or anyone else I'm gonna mention, even though the tone of my voice might indicate otherwise at times, but that's just the effect those films had on me. So originally, my plan was to watch these all in one go. I even got myself some snacks, sweets, orange juice, not freshly squeezed though, sadly. Kickassia, the first one, is an hour and a half long. Suburban Knights, 2 hours and 10 minutes. To Boldly Flee is 3.5 hours long. 3.5 hours long? Let me repeat that one more time. 3.5 hours, and The Wall is 40 minutes. In total, they'd be 7 hours and 50 minutes long. I thought I could start them at around 4 p.m. and finish a bit before midnight. Easy, right? Nope. I was already pretty worn out after the first one, and knowing the next 2 would be even longer definitely did not help. So instead, I just spread them over one whole day. A day of pure, solid pain. When I finished watching this one, I can tell you for a fact that I did not enjoy myself at all. But now looking back at it, especially after seeing how bad things get in the future, it doesn't even feel that awful anymore. And I can really see how exciting seeing this kind of thing would be for the first time for someone who's a big fan of all these YouTubers that were involved in this. It seems like that would be a blast. The plot of this is that the Nostalgia Critic gathers around all of his friends, the fellow critics, to take over together the Republic of Molossia, ruled over by this guy. Fun fact, Molossia is a very real place. It's a micronation in Nevada, meaning that this guy just decided to declare this place as a nation, which is pretty funny. Yes Theory even made a video about it. So the critic and his crew eventually managed to conquer Molossia and declare that from here on out, that territory would be known as the nation of Kickassia. Over time though, it turns out that the critic is a pretty horrible leader. He becomes this big, awful dictator who's completely shitty to all of his subjects, and he doesn't even pay them their wages. Oh my god, how can he do that? So eventually they decide to revolt, they kick his ass, and give the place back to the leader of Molossia. Cool. Nice. This is probably the most simple plot to explain here out of the bunch. It's just gonna get a whole lot more convoluted from here on out. Now, it's safe to say that this thing has quite a lot of different shortcomings. One of them, and people might think I'm being a bit nitpicky here, because this was filmed a long time ago, but man, the audio and video quality in this are absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, what does "its time" mean?
What? For a project this big, that involves getting all these people that live in a lot of different places to the fucking desert, you probably could have gotten, at the very least, a better camera. Whatever, it's not like I don't have enough things to talk about already. The characters in this, who are also in Suburban Knights and To Boldly Flee, can be, at times, so unbelievably annoying. They're all pop culture reference spinning maniacs, and they all just feel like the same guy. This stereotypical kind of early 2010s nerd character, they all look the same as well. They all have similar names. It's all like film brain, film snob, cinema film. It was very hard to tell them apart at first. Now, I don't think that them being annoying is actually their fault. I've checked a bunch of these people out on YouTube, and they seem pretty cool. It's just that the way that their characters are written was done in a very sucky way. Except of the leader of Kickassia. That guy rocks. I love him. He's funny as hell. He even got his family involved in all of this. And you know what? I don't think that he's even in character. I think that's just how he lives in his day-to-day life. They probably didn't even let him know that he's on camera. At the beginning of the film, he's about to get captured by the Critic and his gang, but then he quickly runs back to the house and puts on a disguise.
Hand over Kickassia and nobody gets hurt.
I'm not the president. I'm Fritz von Baugh, Minister of Making Things Orderly.
He does such a great job. I'm so proud of him. And throughout the whole movie, he's always just kind of there lurking around the corner, planting ideas in the minds of the people of Kickassia. He's like, hey, don't you think that this Critic guy is a real awful leader and that he sucks? And everyone's like, oh yeah, wait a second, he does suck. And then he'd be like, oh man, you know who'd do a way better job? Who? You. You do a great job. He's a bit of a troublemaker, isn't he? And that's also what eventually pushed everyone to want to revolt and fight against each other. This man managed to completely destroy his enemies and get control again of his country with nothing but words and gossip, which I think is pretty badass. So I'm gonna give this movie 5 Pinely points just for that. Go buy yourself something nice, movie. He's probably the character I like the most out of all of this, even though he plays more of a side character role throughout the whole thing, which is funny because the character I like the least is actually the main one. In this film, he is nothing short of insufferable. He's just a dick to everyone around him all the time. Even when there are multiple occasions where he has the opportunity to somewhat redeem himself, he always chooses not to. Until the very end of the movie where everyone decides to beat the shit out of him, and after that he's like, oh yeah, fine, I guess I'll be nicer now, when I don't really have a choice. And it doesn't really help that he decided to speak in this weird and stupid dictator voice, or at least what he thinks is a dictator voice.
Say, do you ever get tired of doing that voice?
Nonsense! This is a voice of the gods! A voice that demands honor and justice everywhere he goes. A little bit, yeah.
I realize that it's a joke, but doing that thing for an hour and a half is excruciating. He's just part of this trend that was going around YouTube at the time, where a lot of these online characters would just be the most awful human beings ever. And I guess that that's the joke, that they're annoying. I'm glad that this trend is somewhat over, because seeing a 90-minute movie around what is essentially the human embodiment of the annoying orange is just not fun. Here is where things started going even worse. This thing is a 2-hour and 10-minute long mess. But to be fair, Todd in the Shadows is in it, and I like his videos. I think he's a good YouTuber, so 3 Pinely points. This one happens after the events of Kickassia, though the correlation between them plot-wise is really not that strong. I think Doug wanted fans to be able to watch this one without any context, which, fair enough, I think that's a good idea. So the Nostalgia Critic gathers around his ragtag team of critics once again for another little adventure. He does that by tricking them into thinking they just want a brand new car, which Angry Joe gets pretty angry about.
Oh, no!
Angry Joe, buddy, you gotta be more careful with this kind of stuff. If you keep getting this angry, that might end up seriously affecting your own health. It can raise up your blood pressure and all that. I care about you, man. So then the critic walks into the room, and he's like, hey guys, don't worry, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I got your back. I have something that is worth a lot more than any kind of car or whatever. I have some kind of map or something that would lead us to a gauntlet with a gem in it, and that would be good. Yay! Woohoo! And for some reason, the map also states that they all need to be in cosplay, because that way, I guess they can fill up the film with a whole boatload of hilarious jokes and references. If I'm honest, I think this was an alright addition. Like I said earlier, with Kickassia, it sometimes felt like all these characters kind of mushed and blended into each other. But with this, they can sort of rely on using the traits of the characters they're cosplaying to make them stand out a bit more. So, it's whatever. Also, a new and exciting character that is introduced in this one is a guy named Mati. Critic and his crew are kind of mean to him throughout the whole thing, and are very dismissive of him. They send him to do random, pointless tasks just because they don't really want him to be involved in their adventure. They just want him to be very far away from them. Make sure you remember him, because he might come into effect later. Maybe the person they thought was not good, maybe was not so not good after all. Yeah. Another character you should maybe remember is this fedora-wearing weirdo, who throughout the film goes around murdering people for, using their phones?
No, it isn't. There's one other thing that you own that the 21st century hasn't given you. And it can be taken away very, very easily. Do you want it taken away? Bill.
Everyone has their own hobbies, I guess. So in this movie, they follow the map, they kill and fight a bunch of bad guys like a witch, some dude in robes, and a cat. All in the hopes of finding that glove thing that they care about so much. Anyways, at the end, they fight even more, and then they get to this guy, the final boss, who actually has an iPhone.
I'll talk to you later, okay? I'm in the middle of something. Alright? Okay. Alright, bye. What?
That's a friggin' iPhone!
So what?
So what? That's technology!
Are you kidding me? That's an iPhone! Can't you hear that I'm the voice of reason from the tone of my voice? So then that Mati guy from earlier that everyone hated and thought that he sucked comes back, kills this guy, and saves the day. But at what cost? The cost is that he died. The end. So one thing that really frustrated me when watching this is that this whole thing feels very, very messy. Like, I don't know how much of a set script Doug and his bro wrote for this, maybe barely anything, and that's why the characters are a lot nicer to watch. But really, it just feels like what they did is that they sort of had this kind of vague plan about how the scene is gonna start, what's the main conflict, and how that conflict will be resolved. Which seems good, right? I think that should cover it all. Nope, you're wrong. It doesn't, because we have all the in-between bits, which is most of the movie. The best example of this happening is the fight scenes, the mountains upon mountains of fight scenes. I wouldn't mind them if they were good or just even funny, but for the most part, they just look like this. It's just like seeing a bunch of kids flailing their arms around. And it goes on forever. And it just keeps happening again and again and again and again. That's how every single sword fight in this fantasy-themed film looks like. They very clearly did not have any sort of set plan before filming them. But hey, at least Todd in the Shadows is in this one. He's great. I like his videos. My girlfriend showed him to me only like a week ago. So it was pretty surprising seeing him in this. One thing that I do actually appreciate about this one is that the critic is less annoying. He's just not an awful, irredeemable character like he was in Kickassia, which is a nice change. I still wouldn't go as far as to say that he's a very likable character. I actually very strongly do not think that. I hate the way he delivers his jokes. It's always in this sort of tone of, no, actually what you're saying right now is weird and wrong, and what I'm saying right now at the moment is the correct thing.
Wielder of the flame of honor, dark fire will not avail you, flame of Odin!
Yeah, well... Not before you come in, Dumbledore. In fact, is anyone else already here?
It's like some of these jokes that are written by him, by the way, are made with the sole purpose of making him look like the smart guy in the room. And that's something that he does a lot in all of these movies, especially in To Boldly Flee. But we'll talk about that one in just a sec. But you know what, with all that said, watching all of this did kind of give me this sort of feeling of nostalgia. Not for Doug Walker's content. No, it just reminded me of the kind of videos that my friends and I used to make back when we were like 13, 14. We would go around, sometimes in costumes, sometimes not, with a loose idea of what the plot of what we're filming might be. It was a blast. Some of my best memories from that time are of my friends and I making these videos together. We even rewatch them every now and again to this day. But, as much as it hurts for me to say this, they're also kind of shit. And they would be a whole lot worse if we decided to turn them into 2-hour-long movies. And can you even imagine if they were 3.5 hours long? Man, I can't even begin to think about... This movie broke me. And I do not use these words lightly. I guess people must have really liked the other ones, if he had the balls to make this. The one good thing I can say about this is that the name is nice. I think it's a good name for a movie to boldly flee, though it's just a Star Trek reference. Other than that, I don't know, I guess the CGI is alright for a YouTube video. It still doesn't look great though. Where do I even begin? It's a 3.5 hour long monstrosity. Did it need to be that long? Oh, of course it didn't. The amount of pointless, boring scenes that could just be removed like that with a snap of a finger is just too much to count. I guess I can start with the plot. I'm not too sure how to explain it. It's very stupid, convoluted, and confusing. Believe it or not, there's a lot going on in this. There are like 50 different subplots. According to IMDb, this is what happens. While the Nostalgia Critic continues to blame himself for Mattee's death, a series of mysterious events begin to unfold, which could shake the very fabric of internet critics as we know it. They didn't even try. Mysterious events? Give me a goddamn break. Just admit you didn't watch the whole thing, you cowards. So yeah, this sets right after the events of Suburban Knights, and just like IMDb says, a whole bunch of mysterious events begin to happen. The villains in this are the horrible, horrible people who hate film critics. There are also a lot of references in this that I don't get. I think that this guy is supposed to be John Travolta from some space movie, and half of the scenes just have ripped dialogue from famous pop culture moments. It doesn't even make a joke out of them. It doesn't really parody them. Nope. It just repeats the same thing they said, word for word. This John Travolta guy tries to sue Critic in the most disgusting looking courtroom known to man.
I demand justice! These internet reviewers clearly have too much power!
It's a moot point anyway. The Judiciary Committee has already voted. When they pass the sucker bill, Stop the Unstoppable Copyright Killers Act, reviewers like the Nostalgia Critic won't even be in business anymore.
This is such an eyesore, and it's just also so boring. If you make something that is 3.5 hours long, please, for the love of God, do something that's worth it with that time. They spend like 3 minutes on this pointless scene, talking about so much nonsense. Spoonie, which is this guy, completely loses it at some point. He goes absolutely crazy. It's like he's possessed or something. So the critic calls in 2 doctors to check up on him, and then we get to see in front of our very eyes the funniest scene in cinema history.
Spoonie seems to be completely normal.
Yes, normal.
All except for his saxophone-shaped penis.
Penis?
Yes, but we all knew about that.
We did?
Of course.
The problem seems to be inside of his head.
Which head?
His brain.
Not his penis.
Penis?
No, but thanks for offering.
We shall have to examine Spoonie's head.
His brain?
No, his penis, but we should do that too.
His brain, his head, his penis,
suffering
his
from
brain,
acute
his
case of
penis. You see, it's funny because these doctors, these women, they said the word penis like a whole bunch of times, which is totally unprofessional of them, and it's a pretty funny word just in general.
Why do I talk to people?
Yeah, I agree. Then these 2 doctors hook up Spoonie to this machine that's just sort of like a lie detector, but instead it just tells you what people think in their head.
Remind me to ask him if he's a transvestite.
Damn it!
I love this thing.
Haha, what a great joke. Let's give a round of applause to the writers of this great joke. Woohoo! So apparently Mattee, the guy who died in the last movie, is not actually dead. Well, he is dead, but his character lived on, because this film is really cool and meta, and Mattee is pretty mad at the Nostalgia Critic for being a dick, so now he's gonna kill everyone, I think, and also he's inside of Spoonie's head. So then this guy, who's probably a reference to Obi-Wan, is like, hey, listen, the Nostalgia Critic, there's this thing in the universe called the plot hole, and that's why nothing in this fucking thing makes any sort of sense. That's the reason. And it's also because we're cool and meta. Anyways, this plot hole thing is like a black hole, and if we don't do anything about it, it's gonna suck up all the plot, and everyone's gonna die. Oh no! Oh yeah! And the person behind it all is Mattee. Somehow. Yes, that is the idiotic premise that they decided to base this unbelievably long film on. This is what it's all about, so I hope you're ready. So he gathers his ragtag team once again, for the very last time, thankfully. And then his house turns into a spaceship, so they fly into space to the moon of Europa, because that's where the plot hole is. Also, there's a guy who's like Palpatine in this movie.
Without a critic to stop us, the internet will be ours, and then we shall have peace. Soon the critics will be crushed and the Spoonie one will be one of us. Wait, that's totally my line. What? We're doing Jedi now, right?
You totally stepped over my line.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were doing Sith.
No, we're doing both. See, you're doing Vader, I'm doing the Emperor.
Referencing something, just for the sake of referencing something, is not in itself a joke. You're just saying words. You're just mentioning that something happened in a movie that is infinitely better than this. They would reference something, and then another character would pop up and be like, hey, aren't you referencing this thing right now? Yes, that is exactly what I'm doing. Have a good night, folks. Thank you very much. It is headache-inducing, and they do it all the goddamn time. At one point, Todd in the Shadows, for some reason, turns into RoboCop. Oh, okay, cool. I guess he's RoboCop now. Whatever. What am I supposed to do with this? Now, believe it or not, the second they fly into space, which is 50 minutes into this thing, everything somehow manages to get worse, because guess what? We still have over 2.5 hours of this thing left. What are they gonna do in fake space for 2.5 hours? A whole bunch of nothing, that's what. So there's another ship that now also has this other villain played by Doug Walker. He also doesn't like critics, and he says that he's from Krypton. And I'd say that from this point, about half of what's left of this runtime, it's just the people from the critics ship teleporting to the other enemy ship, fighting with them, and then going back to their own ship and resuming to their normal state, which makes it so that said fight scene becomes utterly pointless. So yeah, fuck it. Let's just repeat doing that for like 50 more times. That would make for such a great movie. In one of these scenes, Nostalgia Critic turns into Judge Dredd. Why is he Judge Dredd? I guess so he can say, I am the law, and feel really cool or something like that. I don't know what goes on in that man's mind. Some other events I can think of from their time in space is that I think at some point they do a song. I actually remember liking that bit quite a lot, because I'm just kind of a fan of music and musicians in general, so seeing that sort of thing represented in this movie was really special to me. Why? I hate this. This movie did not have a good effect on me. It really didn't. I filmed a few bits of me watching it, and I'm not really proud of the man it turned me into.
I think they should abolish the death penalty and instead add a new form of punishment where someone is tied down and forced to watch to boldly flee every single day until they die.
I'm now gonna go over all the different subplots, the ones I can remember at least, just so you can fully understand how many of them there really are. This girl becomes good at building things. Robotod in the Shadows wants to be with a girl, which happens at the end. This kid turns into Luke Skywalker, but this guy on the other hand becomes evil and turns into Darth Vader. Even though I thought this guy sort of took a Darth Vader role already, but screw it. It's just for YouTube, who cares? Some of them get replaced by robot versions of themselves, but then they're saved. This man, despite being a red shirt dude, eventually learns how to stop dying. And Angry Joe turns into Snake from Metal Gear Solid, because it's a reference. I am not really sure why Doug felt like he had to make it like that. Doing something that is just pointlessly complicated and needlessly adding 10 million different subplots is not gonna give this thing any more substance. It's just gonna give me a headache. Really, the worst point of this mess of a movie is the ending. Nostalgia Critic manages to go through the plot hole and meet Doug Walker, his creator. Man, I've never seen someone suck their own dick harder than this.
I'm the writer.
Then who am I?
I guess the character. It's a little surreal and kind of terrifying. I'm gonna get a shot of Rumpleminch. You want anything?
Tell me what's going on here!
Okay, you were a character that I created for an online media show. I don't mean to brag, but it was a pretty big hit.
Oh, didn't see you there. My name is Zor. I'm actually the creator of both the Pinely character and the Mr. YouTuber character. I don't mean to brag or anything, but it was a pretty big hit. Sort of. Kind of. Did you guys ever notice that Doug backwards is actually God? This goes pretty deep. So then God Walker tells his beautiful creation, the Nostalgia Critic, that he has two options. He can either stay and become part of the real world, but all the rest of his gang would disappear in this fiction mess of a thing, or he can come back to the fiction world and help his friends not die. So instead he decides not to do any of that. He makes the plot hole bigger and bigger so his friends can jump into the real world and be saved. And he does that by dying. don't worry, because he later comes back as a ghost to haunt us all.
The Nostalgia Critic is a ghost. He's a fucking ghost now.
And believe it or not, that's actually how Doug Walker killed off his character, with this 3.5 hour long nonsense. I guess he has finally decided that the character has run its course and that it's time to call it a day. And you know what? That's a decision I can actually respect. It's pretty damn bold of them to kill off such an iconic and beloved internet character. Just kidding, they brought him back after a few months. Which makes sense, I guess. But hey, you know what? I can talk as much shit as I want, but at the end of the day, if the people that worked on this had a great time, I think that's all that really matters. The friendship, the camaraderie, the good times. Let's see what they had to say about their experience filming this. I pointed to Boldly Flee as the tipping point between maybe they'll change and this is never going to get better. Completely different experience reading the script versus Suburban Knights. This felt long, self-indulgent, sexist, and mean. Scenes that were just quoting other movies verbatim were embarrassing. I never received the To Boldly Flee DVD. Neither did many fans who bought them. We only had about a week to film this 4-hour movie, and that's only because Holly begged them for an extra day. Everyday Doug scheduled 2 days worth of work because he assumed having proper equipment / crew would make things go faster. Filming this thing was a fucking mess, and let me tell you, it sure does feel like it. I didn't have a good time watching it. The YouTubers involved definitely did not enjoy making it. See, who was this for? Doug? God? I sure hope he had a good time. Otherwise, what the hell was the point of all of this? I really believe that my brain died at this point. I mean, I watched the whole thing, obviously, but I just think it was too much for my poor little box head to handle. What can I say about this? It's a short film that's based on Pink Floyd's movie, The Wall, based on their album, The Wall. It's more of a bad parody of it. The critic sings in this, like, a lot.
When I was a child, I remember being invested.
He's obviously not a great singer. It has some really disgusting CGI bits. Like, I'm sure a lot of effort was put into the CGI, but man, it just looks so bad. His critiques are also very stupid.
We need more victimization.
There are no good teachers, not one, not even by accident.
We need more stuff to rebel.
We don't want to help you, we just want to eat your blood and suck your brains.
No, our education system's broke.
So he agrees that there's a problem in the education system, at least in America, even though this song was made by a British band who are kids in like the 50s or 60s or something. But he thinks that making a song about that is somehow pandering because good teachers exist. What? What would he prefer if they said, we don't need no education, oh, but we actually kind of do because it's important and some teachers are nice? That song would suck. At some point, he says that this is supposed to be a love letter for Pink Floyd. If I got a love letter like that in the mail, I would burn it. Even though watching all this stuff was painful, it was really interesting. I feel like I got what I wanted. These movies definitely did serve as somewhat of a very interesting peek into this guy's brain. And say what you want about him, he has guts. You gotta have some guts to actually make and release these things. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you have another YouTuber movie or maybe a show done by a YouTuber, maybe even something else done by Doug that you think I should review or talk about, let me know in the comments. I already have something in mind for next week, but I'll keep that as a bit of a secret for now. If you boxers watch this whole thing, make sure you include the word bold in your comment, and it could be our little secret. You'll be part of our secret little gang, and all the rest of that secret gang will know all about it. And that's it. Go home. Goodbye.